Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Welcome to our Conversations With series. Today, we're speaking to producer Will Packer about his compelling and exciting new Quibi show called Blackballed. We hope you enjoy. Filmography that you've created for yourself since I met you on your very first picture many
You knew me
months
when,
ago.
my friend. You knew me when.
Yes, sir. But the remarkable tapestry of work, comedy, drama, the absolutely amazing, thank you, Atlanta Child Murderers documentary. And now this. So, I mean, what brought you to this particular project? Because of course, as you and I both know, as two Black men living in America, there were many stories that you could have touched on. But what brought you to this particular piece with Blackballed?
I've always been fascinated by the intersection of race and sports. And it's something that is very uniquely American. And when you think about the most high profile Black people globally, they are typically athletes. When you think about like the most high profile group of Black men globally, you got to go to the NBA, you got to go to basketball players. That's, you know, they are known globally. And yet here in this country of ours, there is certainly this, you know, that shut up and dribble mentality, right? That's nothing new. There has always been this, okay, sports are over here. That's what you do. We as a country will cheer for you. As a community, we will cheer for you and support you and want you to do that as long as it's on the field, as long as it's between the lines. Never shall the two mix: sports, race, social issues, community. And the fact that these are actual real people that come from communities. Oftentimes, our most heralded athletes are coming from some of the most impoverished communities. And so there's this, you know, this interesting juxtaposition of Black fame and notoriety and wealth against these communities, which are, you know, literally the personification of American oppression, racism, economic inequality. And so it's inevitable that you're going to have a clashing of those. And it's something that has always made the American society as a whole uncomfortable. Here recently, it has become a lot more commonplace to see athletes speaking out when it comes to social issues. There's something in the news right now, you know, about athletes saying things that, you know, have nothing to do with sports, right? And so this was like an iconic watershed moment in sports history and really American history, where you had athletes that were forced into the position of having to speak about being Black men, about issues of social justice and race, because they had this racist owner, which everybody knew, by the way, Gil. This was not a secret, you know? Everybody knew this was a bad dude and who he was, but he got caught. He got caught on tape, just like, you know, here what's happening, excuse me, what has most recently happened here in America. You know, dear God, if there weren't cameras for George Floyd. Dear God, if there weren't cameras for Ahmaud Arbery. We wish there had been the body cameras on with Breonna Taylor, hopefully to help get justice, right? But anyway, my point is just that we knew who this guy was, but he got caught and he was at the highest level of power. So that's what interested me. It was a story that I knew and I felt like a lot of people knew. So I was like, okay, what's the angle that we can take? Like, what's the reason for telling this? And the players, you mentioned that you just talked to Matt Barnes. You know, one of the first conversations I had was with Chris Paul. And he said, you know what, I've got such a different perspective now because of the time that has passed. And oftentimes the context that something is given with the benefit of having a view within the context of history So it's not right up on it. And one thing Chris said to me was that, I would have not been able to speak so freely and comfortably if you'd asked me right when it happened. It was raw, it was fresh. I saw it a different way. But with the benefit of having time to talk about it, he and the other players felt like they could be more open and honest. So I saw that as an opportunity, and we got it. These are the types of stories we should be telling.
No, definitely. But still, given the fact that, this show is making its debut literally in the midst of both COVID and Black Lives Matter, I mean, what kind of statement do you think it's making about how is it revealing America's dilemma with race?
Yep. Right now, it's more relevant than ever, right? And it's race and it's power and it's privilege and it's class. It is about, look, the white patriarchal system that this country is really founded on yields nothing without demand. And so here you had one of the most powerful white men in America who was forced to give up one of, if not the most prized possession that he had. That does not happen easily. One of the things that, I like about what we were able to do with the doc was have the conversations with folks like Adam Silver, who talked about, he was just a couple months on the job and how do I deal with this? Because I work for the owners. And, in the doc, you have people like Mark Cuban say, hey, hold on now. This is a slippery slope. When you start talking about private conversations and, what people are saying, in their personal lives, if we call them to task for that, when does it stop? And so, that's something that we're having to deal with now. Obviously, this country is having a reckoning about itself, what this country really is and really has been founded on, and the way that it treats those that are marginalized and disenfranchised. I think that what we saw there, we are still clearly seeing, and you're now having folks that are being made uncomfortable. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. Folks are being made uncomfortable because the reality is now undeniable. You can't turn away. You couldn't turn away for those 8 minutes and 46 seconds, right? You could turn away, but when you look back, he was still dying. You could turn away, but when you look back, he was still being murdered. It was undeniable. And so to me, this is another one of, it's a story. It's an uncomfortable story. When you look in the doc and you look at how, this owner, this NBA owner paraded his Black talent out in front of other rich white people and would put them up there and say things that, sounded like a different type of owner, right? That sounded like a plantation owner, slave owner, the way he would touch and coddle them and present his trophies. And so, we got to be real about it. If we're not honest about where we are, where we came from, then we will not be able to go anywhere different than we've already been.
I mean, what do you hope Blackballed as a series will do to add to the conversation, the Black Lives Matter conversation about race and equality?
Again, if you don't know your history, right, you're destined to repeat it. I think that Blackballed for me is about power and about power in this country and how power structures and power systems work. And so just the Clippers players, just Chris Paul and Matt Barnes and even Doc Rivers, a coach, just them alone could not have been impactful. They had to have the other players that said, we will back you. If something is not done, none of us will play. We'll all boycott, right? That's power. That's what we're seeing right now. But then you had to have a powerful white ally, right? Folks like Adam Silver, folks like the mayor of Los Angeles, they had to step up and say, yeah, this isn't right. We will not stand for that. We're seeing echoes of that now, where you're having non-Black people say, okay, enough is enough. This is not right. I will use my voice to be an ally to this community. So, to me, that's it. We see what happened then, and people coming together to say, we will no longer stand for that. We don't care how powerful you are, owner of the Clippers. You have people now saying, listen, we don't care that you're the police or you're law enforcement. This isn't right. there needs to be something done about this. And so you're having conversations in this country that you've never had before.
I kind of feel that it's intentional, that your efforts have been intentional to sort of mix up the pot, make a nice gumbo of projects, of work that not only reflect a lot of positive things and lightweight things about within our community, but also serious subjects. Am I correct?
No question. And I appreciate you saying that, Gil. And you're somebody, like you said, you knew me, when I started off, and you've seen my journey and seen my trajectory. And I feel like I would be remiss in my position if I did not use the ability that I have to tell stories, to get projects made, to tell a breadth and depth of stories. I feel like if I'm not, using the position that I'm in to tell the story of the Atlanta child murders, or the Middlebrook twins. Middlebrook twins, I did a story about the only two missing twins in America to never be found, are two little Black girls out of Augusta, Georgia. And, I was proud that we were able to put that story on the screen and bring that to life. And then this one. So, and absolutely, I'm going to still do my, Kevin Hart comedies and stuff that is just, showing
Absolutely
happy Black folks, living lives and being silly and just being well-rounded people. Like, I would be remiss if I didn't use my position to tell a variety of stories that represent the diaspora. Imagery is so powerful. It's one of the reasons I really appreciate you and this association, because you honor folks that paint true, well-rounded pictures of Black folks. And the reality is that well before anybody, put a knee on George Floyd's neck or hunted down Ahmaud Arbery or the many other names that have been, murdered and dehumanized, somebody saw them. Somebody had an image, a perspective of them as being less than, somebody to be exploited, somebody who could be hunted, somebody who could be murdered, somebody that was not, or somebody that was a threat. And that is because we've got centuries of images that were not well-rounded, factual images of us. So I feel really good about where we are and where we're going in terms of, folks on our side of the industry, folks that are creating content and folks that are critiquing content. We got a long way to go, and we got a lot of ground to make up. That's the thing. Like when people ask me, like, are we having a renaissance, and, have we finally turned the corner in terms of Black content? I feel like in a lot of ways we have, but I also realize you got to know that there's so many years of imagery that we're fighting against. And a lot of that is ingrained in some of the same people that have the power to affect. And it's not just, law enforcement putting Black folks' lives in danger. It's also people who hire Black people. It's also people at corporations who decide how resources are going to be allocated, how money is going to be spent. That if you see us as well-rounded, real, human, flaws and all, if you see us as real people, as humans to be respected and loved and cared and do business with and everything else, you will view us differently. And I think that could affect real change. So that's just a little, thought about the power of imagery that I have.
Now, how did the relationship with Quibi come about?
They, when we went out and pitched it, they raised their hands. I've known Katzenberg for Jeffrey Katzenberg for a while, and I thought it was a really interesting opportunity. He has been talking about, this idea he had for this platform for a while. Anybody that has been within 5 blocks of Jeffrey Katzenberg has heard this idea over the years, because he would tell anybody who would listen and those who wouldn't. And so I certainly knew about it. And when we were going out with it, it presented an interesting challenge and opportunity, Gil, because, the whole idea of the platform is these, these quick bites, these short episodes.
Bite-sized episodes.
Bite-sized episodes. And so what it means for a doc is that, there's not a lot of time to meander. There's not kind of like a slow pedestrian way to get into a story and fill it with backstory and the narrative. You get right to it. And that's the challenge and the opportunity. And with the chapters, it is set up, you know, like episodic television, each chapter is driving to the next one. So the team did a really good job of doing that. And I think that when this doc was first released on the platform, it was right after the Michael Jordan doc had just aired. And so people had gotten a lot of basketball, you know, nonfiction with the greatest athlete ever, you know, in basketball, certainly heading it up. And so I think that we came in at the right time, because I heard a lot of people say, I'm glad that this feels like something that's quick and gets right to the point, because I just watched 10 hours of something else. And I don't know that I would sit through, you know, another couple of hours of a documentary, a basketball documentary.
What kind of challenges, though, did it present in filling it?
Yeah, well, you know, going in that you got to get right to it. You know, going in that there's going to be a truncation. There's going to be, you're going to have to tell the story in these bite-sized chunks. And so, you know, with the documentary, the thing that's so interesting is that there's such power in the perspective of the storyteller. Because, you know, it's in theory, you're telling a nonfiction story. The truth is the truth, right? And so, you know, you're going to say what you're going to say. I'm going to say what I'm going to say in an interview. But you have an opportunity to shape a narrative with the doc in a different kind of way. You don't have, you know, I obviously do fictional narratives all the time, and we can decide, okay, and the third act needs a little punch up. You know, we can just create a car crash, or, you know, kill somebody off, or put in a set piece, right? But with the doc, you've got what actually happened. And so you got to do your fine tuning is a lot more surgical, and the story is less malleable. But at the same time, the way you tell it has a lot to do with the way the audience is going to perceive it. And so the challenge with that, you know, that format is that you don't have as much time and as much leeway to go in and do massaging around things that maybe you're trying to, you know, present a particular way or create a particular perspective about. So, you know, it's interesting. I think the whole platform is interesting. The whole approach to storytelling is interesting, and it remains to be seen, you know, how well it does in the long term with consumers.
What do you hope the takeaway is? What do you hope the takeaway message is? How do you want people to react?
As with all my content, I want you to feel something, right? Doesn't mean that it always has to be heavy or
Right.
Or about a social issue. This one is, and so I think that this serves as a precursor to, like, now when something happens, you almost expect LeBron to say something. You know, if something happens and that's newsworthy around a social issue, you're like, you know, okay, what are the big athletes? What are they saying? You know, you kind of expect that, but it wasn't always like that. You go back and you look at, you know, Michael Jordan catches a lot of flack for being somebody who stayed out of, you know, politics and issues. But not, everybody around him during that time, that was like what they did. No, the athletes weren't stepping up. You know, like Muhammad Ali is a notable exception, but for the most part, athletes really were kind of shutting up and dribbling and catching the ball and running fast. There wasn't a lot of that generally in that era that preceded this one. And so the thing that I like and that I want people to remember is that, you know, even before, like, you know, before the basketball players got on the stage at the ESPYs, if anybody saw that, I'm sure a lot of people did. And, you know, Chris Paul and LeBron and Melo and everybody got up and, you know, and made a statement around Black Lives Mattering. Before that, you had these players that were involuntarily thrust into the spotlight, thrust into a situation where they were forced to do something, forced to react. There's a quote in the doc from Jemele Hill, and she says very astutely that very often the victims of racism are tasked with fixing it. And the players definitely felt that way. What are you going to do? this racist white man said these statements. Now, what are you going to do? How are you going to fix it? How are you going to solve it? A lot of us know what that feels like right now, because even in today's time of social unrest, a lot of our white peers and friends have called us and said, what can I do? What should be done? What's the answer, right? Well, the people with power, of course, are the ones with the duty to fix an inequitable system, of course. But these players found themselves in that position of what are you going to do? And they had a choice to make. And they could have said, you know what, we're going to burn down Staples Center. You know, we're going to never play again and, you know, try to tear the whole system down. Or they could have said, you know what, we're not going to say anything. We're going to shut up and play. And neither one would have probably been the right response, right? They found something in between, and they used their voices behind the scenes as well as in front. And they were able ultimately to get this guy removed, which had never happened before. You know, in sports history, having an owner forcibly removed from owning their team. So, you know, I think that's the thing that is probably the most powerful about this.
And the one thing I was curious about, in being removed, was he also stripped of his equity?
It was sold. He lost. The team was sold.
Got it.
Yes. So now,
because it's one thing to be removed, but you're still getting paid.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that happened before. So there was a woman named Mars Schott, very racist owner of a baseball team in Cincinnati. She said crazy stuff. They banned her for a particular period of time. She still owned the team and she got back in, right? He was banned for life, but he still owned the team until, and I also like that we go into this in the doc, his wife was you know, helped to force him out and sell it. Now, he still saw the economic benefit, America, patriarchy, white men with power. He still saw tremendous economic benefit because that team was worth so much more because of all those black players that gave that team value, so much more than when he bought it. So he made a lot of money there. But he was removed from the ownership group, and that is something that was very, very important to him.
No, definitely, definitely. So what are we going to see next from you?
Oh, man, when are we going to shoot again, Gil? What's the, can you call up Auntie COVID and find out?
You better shoot soon. We need you so that we can work.
I'm working on a few things. I got a few, you know, like everybody else, you know, was shut down and we got a few things that were at the starting line that were put on pause. And so I've used this time. My team has actually been working very hard during this period to be in development on some exciting things. I just announced that I'm doing a story at Universal called One and Done, which is about an star high school athlete who chooses to go to an HBCU instead of a major D1 program. Yeah. And recently, exactly. And what could be, right? And recently that actually happened with a big recruit committing to Howard. And so, you know, we're starting to see things change, but I'm proud of that one. I'm a HBCU supporter and graduate alum of FAMU, proud. And so anyway, that's one that we recently announced. I've got a project called Praise This with director Tina Gordon, who directed Little for me with Marseille Martin and Regina Hall and Issa Rae. And it is a gospel choir competition movie about gospel choirs who mash up gospel and hip hop. So we're going to have some fun with that one. And then we've got some great, you know, projects across the board at TV. We're busy over at Will Packer Productions. So I'm gonna do my best to get my folks working so I can keep your folks working.
Thank you. We thank you, brother. And it's always sincerely a pleasure.
It is. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for this platform. Thank you to you and the entire membership because, you know, I always feel nothing but support from this body and we need each other. We work together hand in hand, certainly. So thank you. Thank you for this. And thank you folks for your consideration when it comes to the Emmys for Blackballed. Thank you.
Absolutely. God bless.
All right. Bless you, brother. Talk soon.